1803, Hellgate, Manhattan. Wide shot across 13 acres where wilderness meets water. The East River collides with Long Island Sound in turbulent eddies. The Dutch called this place Hellegat, bright strait, clear opening. The English corrupted it to Hellgate. A wooden mansion rises on the bluff. 2 stories of timber frame construction, clapboard siding painted white, federal-style symmetry in the window placement. 6/6 panes on the first floor. Smaller windows on the second. A central door flanked by sidelights. Simple dental molding under the eaves. The roof is cedar shingle, already weathering to gray. No cupola, no ornamentation. The house speaks the architectural language of merchant prosperity, not aristocratic ambition. Not yet. Inside, the layout follows colonial convention. A central hall bisects the structure. Parlors on either side for receiving guests. A dining room to the rear overlooking the water. Kitchen in a separate outbuilding to prevent fire from consuming the main house. Upstairs, bedchambers for family. Smaller rooms for servants. The interiors are plastered and painted. Simple wainscoting. Fireplaces in every room. Brick chimneys rising through the roof. The furniture is functional. Windsor chairs. A few pieces imported from England. Persian carpets, perhaps acquired through the China trade. The windows frame views of water and forest. Ships passing. The lights of Brooklyn across the Sound. This is not a showpiece. This is a proto-dynastic cell. Raw extraction refined into permanence. But no one standing on this shoreline could imagine how violently this dynasty would fall. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe and hit the like button. It helps this channel bring forgotten histories back into the light and ensures you never miss the next chapter buried in America's dark architectural past. Inside this house, a German immigrant named John Jacob Astor counts his profits. $250,000. $7 billion in modern equivalent, money extracted from beaver pelts and the bodies of native trappers working frozen lakes beyond civilization's edge. From Chinese ports where opium flowed in exchange for tea and silk. From a commercial network stretching from Montreal to Canton, built on monopoly and systematic elimination of competitors. Astor arrived in 1784 with $25 sewn into his coat and a case of flutes to sell. 21 years old. The son of a butcher from Waldorf, a village near Heidelberg so small it registered on no maps that mattered. He worked in his brother's musical instrument shop in London. Learning English, anglicizing Johann Jakob to John Jacob. On the ship crossing the Atlantic, he met a fur trader who explained the mechanics. Buy pelts for pennies. Ship them to Europe, where beaver felt hats commanded dollars. The arbitrage was extraordinary. Astor understood immediately. This was not about craftsmanship. This was about exploiting gaps, about positioning himself between supply and demand, between wilderness and wealth. The Hellgate House is where this transformation occurs. Where trading becomes dynasty, where temporary fortune calcifies into inherited power. The mansion functions as summer retreat from lower Manhattan's heat and disease. As signal of arrival, as investment in land that will appreciate. Astor's wife Sarah manages the household. 7 children. The property extends to the waterline. Orchards and kitchen gardens. Paths through woods that will become public parkland a century later. The house serves for 40 years. Then, it is demolished in 1869. Timber salvaged or burned. Land subdivided. The proto-dynasty moves to larger structures, but the pattern is set. Wealth always hides its own collapse. Power, once established, seeks to expand and entrench. In 1808, Astor founds the American Fur Company. A monopoly, dressed in corporate language, designed to dominate the trade from the Great Lakes to the Pacific coast. The strategy is straightforward. Buy out competitors. Undercut prices until smaller operations fail. Use political connections to secure favorable regulations. He writes to Thomas Jefferson, framing his venture as patriotic expansion. American enterprise pushing back against British commercial dominance. Jefferson responds enthusiastically. Astor is an excellent man, he writes, perfectly master of his business. But the business is brutal. Trading posts established across the frontier. Trappers hired, often French Canadians or indigenous peoples who know the territory. They are provided goods on credit. Traps, ammunition, alcohol. They deliver pelts. The trappers remain in debt. The pelts accumulate. The profits compound. Beaver populations collapse. By 1820, beaver hats reach peak fashion in Europe. By 1830, the market shifts to silk. Astor exits entirely, liquidating the American Fur Company and pouring accumulated wealth into Manhattan real estate. Land along Fifth Avenue, then a dirt road past farms. Parcels in what will become Midtown, the financial district, the Upper East Side. He purchases strategically, holds for decades, waits for the city to reach it, then sells or leases at enormous profit. He is not building mansions for himself. He is constructing tenements and commercial properties for rent. The model is elemental. Buy cheap. Hold. Wait. The city grows. Land appreciates. Rents accumulate. By his death in 1848, real estate holdings generate passive income exceeding anything earned from fur. His estate is valued at $20 million, 1% of the entire United States gross domestic product. If someone owned 1% of current U.S. GDP today, their net worth would exceed $200 billion. Astor leaves the bulk to his second son William, because the eldest, John Jr., is sickly and mentally unstable. The inheritance carries an implicit mandate. Preserve this. Expand it. The money moves through generations, like genetic code. William Backhouse Astor understands his role. He did not build the fortune, but he can maintain it, multiply it. His son, William Backhouse Astor Jr., marries Caroline Schermerhorn in 1853. She is 23. Her family descends from Dutch settlers. Old Knickerbocker stock. The kind of lineage that matters when money alone is insufficient. William Jr. is a yachtsman. He spends most of his time on boats, leaving Caroline to manage the household, and eventually, to construct an entire social architecture designed to separate the worthy from the unworthy. The mansion was never the point. The hierarchy was. 1862. Caroline and William build at 350 Fifth Avenue, the corner of 34th Street, the site where the Empire State Building will stand a century later. The structure is brownstone, not marble or limestone like the new arrivals prefer. Brownstone signals Knickerbocker restraint, old money that does not need to announce itself. The facade is 4 stories of Nova Scotia freestone. Horizontal emphasis, no towers or turrets. Corinthian columns frame the entrance. A double stoop rises to the piano nobile. The principal floor, elevated above the street. The ground level houses service areas. Coal storage. Wine cellar. Servants' hall. Iron railings enclose a garden to the side, shared with William's brother's mansion next door. The two families are neighbors for 28 years, though the wives do not speak. Inside, the entrance hall establishes the grammar of exclusion. Black and white marble floor in checkerboard pattern, gas chandeliers, later converted to electric, walls painted in deep colors. Burgundy. Forest green. A staircase rises to the right. Walnut balustrade with carved newel posts. Close-up on the craftsmanship. Each spindle turned by hand. At the landing, a stained glass window depicting the Astor family crest. Light filtered through colored glass, casts patterns on the stairs. From the hall, double doors open to the front parlor. This is where Caroline receives afternoon callers, ladies who have made appointments, who arrive at the proper hour, who leave calling cards in the silver tray by the door. The room is decorated in the aesthetic movement style. Japanese screens, blue and white porcelain. Furniture upholstered in Morris fabrics. A grand piano occupies one corner. Sheet music stacked nearby. Chopin. Liszt. Nothing too modern. The rear parlor connects through pocket doors, more intimate, darker. Walls covered in William Morris wallpaper. Heavy velvet drapes blocking street noise. This is where family gathers, where real conversations occur away from the performance of the front rooms. Beyond the parlors, the dining room. Mahogany table extending to seat 24. Each place set with specific silverware. Multiple forks, knives, spoons for different courses. Crystal glasses for water, white wine, red wine, champagne. Finger bowls. The protocol is elaborate, designed to separate those who know from those who do not. Caroline studies etiquette manuals. She consults with Ward McAllister, a Savannah socialite who has made himself indispensable to New York hostesses. He teaches them which fork, which wine, which topic of conversation. He creates rules where none existed. The dining room walls are paneled in dark wood. Portraits of ancestors hung between sconces. A sideboard displays silver service. Tea sets. Candelabras. Trophies from the china trade. The ceiling is coffered, painted white to reflect light from the chandelier. Slow tilt up toward the plasterwork. Rosettes and dentils. Craftsmanship that costs more than most families earn in years. But the ballroom is the center. The machine within the machine. 50 feet long, 30 feet wide, 16 feet high. The room occupies the entire width of the house at the rear. Overlooking the garden, the floor is parquet, oak laid in herringbone, finished to mirror brightness, covered during events with layers of carpets. Persian, Turkish, patterns so intricate they seem to move in candlelight. The walls are divided into panels. Cream silk fabric stretched over wooden frames, gilt mirrors between each panel, multiplying the space, creating infinite reflections. 4 gas chandeliers hang from the ceiling, each with dozens of cut crystal prisms. When lit, they transform the room into a jewelry box. Light fracturing through glass, casting rainbows across the silk walls. At one end, a raised platform for the orchestra. At the other, double doors opening to the garden for summer events. The ballroom is not a room for dancing. It is a theater of social discipline, a space where the 400 gather to perform their distinction, where those outside can only imagine what occurs within. This is a social machine in stone. Caroline transforms this space into the center of gravity for New York society. She holds dinners, receptions, most importantly, an annual ball every January, always on a Monday night, dinner at 11, dancing until dawn. The invitations are handwritten on cream cards. Mrs. Astor requests the pleasure of your company. To receive one is to exist. To be excluded is to disappear. The guest list becomes an obsession for those on the margins. Caroline works with Ward McAllister to codify who belongs. Together, they create the 400. The number supposedly derived from the ballroom's capacity, though some claim it refers to assembly rooms at Delmonico's restaurant. The exact origin is irrelevant. What matters is the principle. There are 400 people in New York who really matter. People at ease in ballrooms. People who understand protocols without being told. Everyone else is outside. The system operates through genealogy and wealth combined. Old Knickerbocker families form the core, descendants of Dutch settlers. But Caroline understands New York changes too rapidly for complete exclusivity. New fortunes emerge constantly. Railroads, steel, manufacturing. If she excludes all new money, her system becomes irrelevant. So she makes exceptions, carefully curated. The rule is 3 generations of wealth. Your grandfather must have been rich. This conveniently includes the Astors, whose fortune John Jacob made 2 generations back. It excludes most industrialists, whose wealth is too recent, too visibly earned through labor. But exceptions exist for the very richest. Families whose fortunes cannot be ignored. Power always builds higher before it breaks. The most dramatic case unfolds in 1883. Alva Vanderbilt, married to William Kissam Vanderbilt, is determined to break through. She commissions Richard Morris Hunt to design a mansion at 665th Avenue. French chateau style, limestone facade carved with ornamental detail. The most expensive private residence ever constructed in New York. The housewarming is planned as the event of the season. A costume ball, guests required to wear elaborate historical dress, entertainment provided by young society figures, including Caroline's youngest daughter. But weeks before, Alva sends word. Young Caroline Astor cannot participate. Why? Because Mrs. Astor has never formally called on Mrs. Vanderbilt. In social protocol, this matters. A married woman does not call until she has been called upon first. By refusing to call, Caroline has declared Alva unworthy of recognition. The situation reverses. Young Caroline desperately wants to attend. All her friends will be there. Exclusion would be humiliating. She begs her mother to make the call. Caroline faces a choice: maintain principles and exclude the Vanderbilts, or concede to preserve her daughter's position. She chooses pragmatism. She calls. The moment her card hits the silver salver in the Vanderbilt entrance hall, an invitation arrives at the Astor residence. Caroline attends the ball wearing her customary dark velvet and diamonds. The Vanderbilts are admitted. The system adjusts. But the admission demonstrates Caroline's power. She controls the terms. She decides when exceptions occur. The Vanderbilts enter not because they built a grand house or possess wealth, but because Caroline permits it. Her approval is currency more valuable than money. The walls keep others out. The walls keep them in. The annual balls grow increasingly elaborate. The quadrille, a complex group dance, evolves into precision performance. Dancers must know their positions, move in synchronization, follow the leader without hesitation. The dance is metaphor for social order, a demonstration that these people can coordinate, perform together, maintain a system requiring everyone to know their place. Those who cannot master the dance are revealed as outsiders, no matter their wealth. Ward McAllister publishes the official list in 1892 through the New York Times. Bankers, lawyers, brokers, real estate men, railroaders, a few architects, one publisher, one editor. A mix of knobs and swells. Knobs from old money. Swells from new fortunes that Caroline has vetted and approved. The publication creates backlash. Town Topics magazine, a gossip sheet, declares it duty to expose society's sins. Critics mock the pretension. O. Henry writes the 4 million as deliberate response, arguing every human in New York deserves notice. But the system persists. The balls continue. The exclusions sting. Caroline reigns for 40 years. Yet even she cannot escape the forces, reshaping the city. But the foundations were already shifting. In the 1880s, Caroline's nephew, William Waldorf Astor, believes his wife should be called the Mrs. Astor. He is the male head of the family, eldest son of John Jacob Astor III. By primogeniture and patriarchal logic, his wife Mamie should hold the title. But Caroline is the senior Astor wife by marriage date and has claimed the title for decades. More critically, she possesses the social power. She hosts the balls, controls the invitations. The title is not legal, but recognition of preeminence. Caroline refuses to cede it. The dispute escalates. William Waldorf, unable to dislodge his aunt socially, retaliates architecturally. In 1893, he demolishes his father's mansion next door and announces plans for the Waldorf Hotel. 13 stories. German Renaissance style. Designed by Henry Hardenberg, the building will overshadow Mrs. Astor's residence, literally and symbolically. A commercial hotel beside the social center of New York. The construction noise is unbearable. The proximity of paying guests, of strangers, of what Caroline calls a glorified tavern, is an insult to everything she built. But William Waldorf is making a point. If he cannot control society, he can destroy her position. Make the location untenable. Force her to move. Caroline resists for a year. But by 1895, the situation is impossible. The hotel is complete. The noise constant. The neighborhood transforming. Commercial development pushes northward. Old Knickerbocker families relocate to the Upper East Side, building along Fifth Avenue in the 60s and 70s, closer to Central Park. Caroline and her son John Jacob Astor IV decide to follow. They will not simply move. They will construct the largest, grandest private residence in New York. A statement that the Astors remain preeminent, that no hotel can diminish their standing. The next house would change everything. They hire Richard Morris Hunt, the most prestigious architect in America, designer of Vanderbilt mansions, the Metropolitan Museum facade, Newport cottages for the wealthiest families. Hunt designs a double mansion at 845th Avenue. 2 addresses, 840 for John Jacob, 841 for Caroline, connected internally but with separate entrances. The architecture is French Renaissance, imitating Château de Blois and palaces of Louis XII. Limestone facade, each block cut and carved before installation. Ornamental detail covers the surface. Grotesques, gargoyles, carved foliage. Every window surrounded by sculptural frames. Balconies with wrought iron railings. Dormers breaking the roofline. Copper roof that will patina to green. The building rises 5 stories, covering a full block frontage, extending back 120 feet. Wide shot of the facade from street level. The structure dominates everything around it. This is architectural overreach of a fading order. Caroline's entrance is through a porte cochere where carriages deposit guests under cover. Rain or snow, visitors arrive protected. The door is bronze, 12 feet tall, carved with allegorical figures. Justice, wisdom, plenty. A doorman in livery opens it. Inside, a domed vestibule, 40 feet high. The dome is coffered, painted sky blue with gold stars. Classical motifs. The floor is Italian marble, white Carrara with gray veining, laid in geometric patterns, radiating circles. The walls are lined with niches containing marble busts. Astor ancestors. Some real, some invented for effect. Bronze sculptures on pedestals, figures from mythology. Lighting comes from bronze sconces shaped like torches. The space echoes. Footsteps amplified by hard surfaces. Voices carrying upward into the dome. This is designed to awe, to reduce visitors to supplicants before they reach the hostess. From the vestibule, the Great Hall. 60 feet long, 30 wide, rising 2 stories to a skylighted ceiling. The skylight is stained glass. Geometric designs in amber and blue. Natural light, filtered and colored. The floor is mosaic marble, intricate patterns that took craftsmen months to lay. The walls are hung with tapestries and paintings from Caroline's collection. European masters, landscapes and portraits, works costing thousands each. A grand staircase rises along one wall. Single sweeping curve cantilevered from the wall with no visible supports. Each step carved from a single block of marble. 30 steps. The balustrade is bronze, cast in sections, polished to mirror finish. Slow tracking shot following the curve upward. The staircase is engineering marvel and status symbol. It cost more than most houses. At the landing, a stained glass window 3 stories tall. Biblical scene. Light streaming through creates colored patterns on the marble. This is the spine of the mansion, the axis around which everything rotates. From the Great Hall, guests enter the reception room. Adam style. Walls painted pale blue and cream. Plasterwork reliefs cover the ceiling. Swags and garlands. Medallions with classical figures. The furniture is arranged in conversational groupings. Chairs and settees upholstered in silk. Small tables for tea service. Here, Caroline receives on formal occasions, standing beneath her portrait by Carolus Duran. Life-sized. She wears black velvet, her famous diamond necklace, stones so large they are visible from across the room. The portrait is declaration. This is the Mrs. Astor. This is the woman you came to see. Beyond, the drawing room, 50 feet long, walls covered in gilt-framed mirrors that multiply the space infinitely. Reflections within reflections. The floor is parquet, covered with layers of oriental carpets, red and gold. Patterns intricate enough to seem alive in the light from 6 crystal chandeliers. The furniture is French. Louis XVI. Delicate chairs and settees designed more for display than comfort. This is not a room for relaxation. It is a stage, but the ballroom is the culmination. The reason for everything else. 80 feet long, 40 wide. Rising 4 stories to a skylighted roof, the walls are paneled in ivory satin, stretched over wooden frames, hung with paintings from Caroline's collection. The floor is marble, herringbone pattern, covered during events with 16 massive Persian rugs, each hand-knotted, each worth more than a house. 4 enormous crystal chandeliers hang from the ceiling, each weighing hundreds of pounds, lit by electric bulbs. This mansion is among the first private residences in New York, fully electrified. The chandeliers are connected by pearl strings, loops of iridescent beads catching and refracting light. The acoustic properties are perfect. An orchestra at one end projects sound evenly across the space. Conversations at normal volume do not carry. The room allows simultaneous performances, music, dancing, discreet discussions. At the far end, a marble chimneypiece rises 30 feet. Carved from a single block of stone, decorated with caryatids, male figures supporting the mantle's weight. Above them, a painted panel showing a ball at Versailles. A reminder that Caroline's parties connect to a tradition stretching back to European royalty. Before the fireplace, a raised platform covered in fur blankets, white and gray pelts from animals that might have been traded by John Jacob Astor 80 years earlier. Full circle. The Dynasty, built on fur, displays fur as luxury. On the platform, a red satin divan where Caroline sits to receive guests. Elevated above the crowd, a queen on a throne. Around the room, chairs and small tables in precise formation. Places for guests to rest between dances, to observe. The ballroom is not just architecture. It is a machine for creating and maintaining social hierarchy. Caroline at the center. The 400 radiating outward. Everyone else excluded. Watching from outside. Imagining what it means to be inside. To belong. The second floor contains Caroline's private suite. Bedroom with walls covered in silk damask. A domed boudoir with curved walls and a circular skylight. Dressing room with floor-to-ceiling mirrors and mahogany wardrobes. Bathroom with marble fixtures and running hot water. Guest suites for visiting family. The 3rd and 4th floors house additional guest rooms and servants' quarters. 20 servants live in. Cooks, maids, valets, footmen, butlers. The 5th floor is entirely servants' space, their dining hall, sitting rooms, sleeping quarters. The architecture segregates rigidly. Family and guests never see servant spaces. Servants use backstairs. Service corridors, hidden behind walls. The mansion presents a facade of effortless luxury. But behind it, an invisible workforce maintains the illusion. Push in toward the back stairs. Narrow, steep, plain plaster walls. This is the other mansion. The one guests never see. A mansion built to outlive a dynasty. But it will not. Caroline presides over this domain for 13 years. The balls continue. The invitations matter. But the world is changing faster than she can control. By 1900, younger hostesses like Mamie Fish and Alva Belmont experiment with less formal entertaining. Dinners with monkeys. Parties on horseback. Events that mock the rigid protocols Caroline has maintained. Her severe nervous breakdown in 1906 marks the beginning of the end. She continues planning parties, arranging menus, writing invitations. But her family instructs servants to set the plans aside. The parties never happen. She shops, but stores are told not to deliver goods. She lives in managed delusion, hosting gatherings that exist only in her imagination. She dies in 1908. Her son, John Jacob, inherits the mansion and begins converting the double residence into a single home. He reunites with his first wife, Ava. But the marriage is over. She has publicly stated she married him only for money. By 1911, John Jacob marries Madeline Force. 18 years old. He is 47. The scandal is immediate. Madeline is a year younger than his son from his first marriage. The couple takes an extended honeymoon abroad, Europe, Egypt. Waiting for gossip to subside, Madeline becomes pregnant. They decide to return so the child can be born on American soil. They book passage on the newest, most luxurious ship available, the Titanic. Power expands until it fractures. April 10, 1912. John Jacob Astor boards at Cherbourg with Madeline, their staff, an Airedale Terrier named Kitty. He is the richest passenger. Net worth $87 million, $2.8 billion in modern equivalent. He represents one of America's oldest fortunes. Wealth compounded across 4 generations. They occupy the most expensive, first-class cabins on sea deck, suites with private promenades, separate bedrooms and sitting rooms. The Titanic is designed for passengers like them. A floating palace demonstrating Edwardian luxury at its peak. First-class dining room seats 500. Grand staircase descends through 6 decks, carved oak and wrought iron, topped by a glass dome. Swimming pool, gymnasium, Turkish bath, squash court, library. First-class cabins decorated in historical styles. Louis XIV's, Italian Renaissance, Georgian. Passengers choose their preferred aesthetic. Third-class passengers are housed in small cabins with bunks. Communal dining. Limited deck access. Separated from first class by locked gates. Staircases that do not connect. A geography of class built into the ship's architecture. The voyage is uneventful for 4 days. The Astors dine at the captain's table, walk the promenades. John Jacob manages investments by telegram. Madeline rests, 5 months pregnant. On April 14th evening, they dress for dinner. Multi-course meal, oysters, consommé, filet mignon. After dinner, they retire. Around 11:40, the ship strikes an iceberg. The collision is not dramatic. A grinding sound, a shudder through the hull. Many passengers sleep through it. John Jacob understands the severity quickly. He observes ice scattered on the forward deck, returns to the cabin, tells Madeline to dress warmly, to bring jewelry. They go to the gymnasium where first-class passengers gather. Officers are calm, reassuring. It is a precaution. The damage is minor. But John Jacob has seen the ice. Notice the ship's list. He knows the Titanic is sinking. At 12:45, the first lifeboat is lowered half empty. Officers are reluctant to alarm passengers. Better to stay on the warm ship with food and light. The lifeboats look frail in dark water. But as more boats are prepared, as distress rockets arc into the sky, the reality becomes clear. Not enough lifeboats. 20 boats for 2,200 people. The arithmetic is brutal. Women and children first is not courtesy, but selection mechanism. John Jacob helps Madeline into lifeboat 4. Places her maid and nurse beside her. Asks the officer if he can join them. His wife is pregnant. The officer refuses. Women and children only. John Jacob steps back, lights a cigarette, watches as the boat is lowered. Lifeboat 4 leaves at 1:55. John Jacob remains on deck with other first-class men who know they will not survive. They are calm. They smoke. They wait. The orchestra plays. Music drifting across the deck. Surreal accompaniment to disaster unfolding. By 2:15, the bow is completely submerged. The stern rises into the air. People cling to railings. At 2:20, the ship breaks apart. The stern section hangs vertical before sliding beneath the water. 1,500 people are in the ocean. Water temperature is 28 degrees. Hypothermia sets in within minutes. Most die within 15 to 30, screaming at first. Then, silence. The line of succession shifted, but the dynasty was already drifting toward fragmentation. John Jacob Astor's body is recovered April 22 by the cable ship Mackay Bennett, one of 333 found. More than 1,000 are never recovered. He is identified by initials sewn into his jacket. A gold pocket watch. $7,500 in cash. The body shows no trauma. He likely died from hypothermia or was struck by debris when the ship broke. His son Vincent, 20 years old, travels to Halifax to claim the remains. The funeral is held May 4th at the Church of the Messiah in Rhinebeck. A second service at Trinity Church Cemetery in Manhattan. He is buried in the family vault. The newspapers cover it extensively. Photographs of the widow, heavily veiled. Descriptions of flowers, mourners, hymns. John Jacob is remembered as a gentleman who followed the code, who stepped aside so women and children could survive. His death is framed as noble sacrifice, befitting his class. But the code itself is arbitrary, designed to preserve a hierarchy that benefits those at the top until the moment it does not. 4 months after the sinking, Madeline gives birth to John Jacob Astor VI, known as Jakey, the Titanic baby. But the child will not inherit what his father intended. The will leaves $69 million to Vincent, the son from the first marriage. Madeline receives $100,000 and a $5 million trust, along with use of the Fifth Avenue mansion, the Newport estate, several luxury items, but only if she does not remarry. The fortune remains with Vincent. The dynasty continues, but it is already fracturing. Vincent sells the Fifth Avenue mansion in 1926. The structure, less than 30 years old, is demolished. Temple Emmanuel is built on the site. The interiors are auctioned. The ballroom where Caroline received the 400 is dismantled piece by piece. Chandeliers sold separately. Marble staircase removed. Vincent prefers his Long Island estate. No interest in maintaining the Fifth Avenue presence. The Waldorf Astoria Hotel, born from family rivalry, is demolished in 1929 for the Empire State Building. A new Waldorf Astoria opens on Park Avenue. But the connection to the Astor family is increasingly symbolic. Vincent marries 3 times. Has no children. When he dies in 1959, he leaves most of his estate to the Vincent Astor Foundation rather than to his half-brother Jakey. Jakey sues Vincent's widow for his inheritance, settles for $250,000. The bulk goes to the foundation, which supports the New York Public Library and civic institutions. The Astor name remains on buildings and streets, but the family's social dominance is finished. Madeline remarries twice, forfeiting her claim to the mansion and trust fund. She dies in 1940. Jakey becomes a socialite, a shipping businessman known more for engagements and divorces than achievement. He marries 4 times, dies in 1992 in Miami Beach, buried at Trinity Church Cemetery. His children inherit a fraction of what their great-great-grandfather accumulated. They built walls to keep others out. The walls kept them in. The original Hellgate Mansion was demolished in 1869. The gardens are now Carl Schurz Park. The 350 Fifth Avenue brownstone was torn down for the Astoria Hotel, later demolished for the Empire State Building. The 840 Fifth Avenue Chateau was destroyed for Temple Emmanuel. Beechwood, the Newport summer estate, passed through various owners, became a museum, an event space, now a private residence owned by Larry Ellison, not open to the public. The physical structures are gone, but the patterns they established remain. The Astors created a template for how wealth transforms into power, how money becomes social capital, how exclusion operates as control. They demonstrated that in America, aristocracy could be invented within 2 generations, that the son of a butcher could, found a dynasty. That a woman with no political office, no inherited title, no legal authority, could rule an entire city's social structure through nothing more than the power to grant or withhold invitations. They also demonstrated the fragility of such power, that it depends on collective agreement to maintain the fiction of superiority, that it cannot survive scandal, tragedy, or the passage of time. Every dynasty thinks it is permanent. None are. Beechwood deserves closer examination. The Newport estate was purchased in 1881, an Italianate villa originally built in 1852, designed by Andrew Jackson Downing and Calvert Vaux. The original structure burned in 1855. Vaux rebuilt using the same plans. When the Astors acquired it, Richard Morris Hunt renovated extensively. The façade was updated. French Renaissance details added to match the Manhattan mansion's style. The house sits on 9 acres, overlooking Rhode Island Sound, wide shot across the lawn toward the ocean. The mansion is 3 stories, painted pale yellow with white trim. Verandas wrap around 3 sides, 2-story columns supporting the upper balcony. The veranda floors are painted wood, wicker furniture arranged in conversational groups, potted palms, hanging ferns. This is the summer court, a seasonal illusion of stability. The front entrance opens to a hall with black and white marble floor, staircase rising to the right, parlors to either side. But the heart of Beechwood is the ballroom. Smaller than the Manhattan version, accommodating 400 people, which gives the 400 their name, according to some accounts. The room is 50 feet long, 30 wide. The walls are painted pale green, mirrors between each window. The floor is parquet, covered with carpets during events. 3 crystal chandeliers, smaller than the Manhattan versions but still impressive. French doors along one wall open to the veranda. During summer balls, guests spill outside. Ocean breeze mixing with music from the orchestra. The architecture here is different, more relaxed, less imposing. This is where the rigid Manhattan protocols soften slightly, where Caroline allows a degree of informality. But the social hierarchies remain. Who is invited? Where they are placed at dinner? Who is allowed on the veranda? Versus confined to the ballroom. The architecture enforces these divisions subtly. Wide doorways allow Caroline to observe all spaces simultaneously. Narrow passages force guests into single file, creating natural choke points she can control. The upper floors contain guest suites. Family occupies the 2nd floor. Visiting members of the 400 occupy the 3rd. Servants are housed in a separate wing. Again, the architecture segregates. Service stairs, hidden behind walls. Servants move invisibly. The gardens extend to the cliff edge, overlooking the Sound. Formal plantings near the house. Roses, boxwood hedges, gravel paths. Further from the house, more natural landscaping. Trees, wildflowers. A path descends to a private beach. This is where the family escapes public view, where Caroline walks alone in the early morning, where the performance of aristocracy pauses briefly before resuming. The Newport estate functions differently than Manhattan. Here, the 400 come not to be judged, but to be confirmed. The invitation to Beechwood is itself the validation. Those who arrive already belong. The mansion is not a test, but a reward. But it, too, is temporary. Seasonal. The family occupies it only 3 months per year. The rest of the time, it sits empty. Furniture covered. Shutters closed. Staff reduced to a caretaker. The architecture of power requires constant activation. Without people, it is just rooms. Architecture outlasts people, but not the systems that built it. The demolitions tell their own story. The Hellgate Mansion falls first in 1869, barely noticed. A relic of the Proto-Dynasty, cleared for land speculation. The 350 Fifth Avenue brownstone is demolished in 1896 for the Astoria Hotel. Caroline is still alive. She watches her former home destroyed, replaced by the very hotel that drove her away. The irony is visible to everyone. The Waldorf and Astoria hotels merge, become the Waldorf Astoria, a hyphen connecting two rival Astor branches, but it is not a family property. It is a commercial enterprise. The Astor connection is branding, marketing. In 1929, the Waldorf Astoria is itself demolished. Too valuable as real estate. The site becomes the Empire State Building. The Astor's original power base becomes the world's tallest building, but the family has no connection to it. They are spectators to their own erasure. The 840 Fifth Avenue mansion falls in 1926. Less than 30 years after completion, Vincent Astor sells it to developers who tear it down for Temple Emmanuel, a synagogue on the site of the Protestant social fortress. The symbolism is not lost. The old order displaced by the very immigrants Caroline's system was designed to exclude. The marble staircase is auctioned, the chandeliers dispersed, the ballroom dismantled. Some pieces go to museums, most to private collectors. The mansion exists now only in photographs and memory. Beechwood survives longest because it is outside Manhattan, because it has historical designation, because enough people remember it matters. But it too loses its function, becomes a museum in the 1960s. Then an event space. Then a private residence again. Each iteration moving further from its original purpose. From summer court of American aristocracy, to tourist attraction, to real estate investment. The architecture persists, but the meaning dissolves. Buildings outlast their builders, but systems outlast buildings. The structures fall. The hierarchies remain. Different names, different addresses. Same architecture of exclusion, erasure of aristocratic memory. Buildings die faster than myths. What remains is a question about capital itself. Whether the accumulation of wealth is achievement or pathology. Whether the structures built to protect it serve any purpose beyond perpetuating inequality. John Jacob Astor arrived with nothing and built an empire. Is this admirable or extractive? He created jobs, he developed real estate, he donated to libraries. He also crushed competitors, exploited trappers, traded opium, hoarded wealth. The ledger is complicated. Caroline Astor created social order in a chaotic city. She established protocols. She codified behavior. She made New York society function as a coherent system. She also excluded thousands. Perpetuated snobbery. Valued lineage over merit. Maintained barriers that kept immigrants and self-made millionaires outside. The judgment depends on perspective. On whether you were inside the ballroom or outside looking in. Whether you were in first class on the Titanic or locked in steerage. Whether you see demolished mansions as monuments to ambition or evidence of waste. History does not resolve these questions. It simply records them. The Astor estates are gone. The family is dispersed. The fortune is institutionalized. But the pattern remains visible. Wealth accumulates. Power consolidates. Exclusion operates. Mansions rise. Systems form to protect them. Hierarchies calcify. Then, inevitably, they fracture. The mansions fall. The systems adapt. New names replace old ones. But the architecture of inequality persists. Different facades. Same foundation. The Astors demonstrated this cycle at scale. They compressed 4 generations what usually takes 10. Rise. Consolidation. Dominance. Decline. Collapse. Each phase visible in the architecture. Hellgate's modest federal style. The brownstone's Knickerbocker restraint. The double mansion's French Renaissance excess. Then, demolition. Erasure. Replacement. The buildings told the story even before the family understood it. Power always overbuilds, creates monuments to its own permanence, constructs palaces that survive only decades. Because the architects of power never believe it will end, they design for eternity. They build as if invulnerable. But stone is more durable than bloodlines. Marble more permanent than fortunes. The mansions should have outlasted the dynasty. Instead, they fell first. The dynasty lingered as memory, as scattered descendants, as names on library wings and park signs. But the houses that embodied that power were deliberately destroyed. Not by time or neglect, but by economic calculation. The land was worth more than the buildings. The buildings fell. The land was redeveloped. The cycle began again. This is the true architecture of American wealth. Not the mansions themselves, but the pattern of their destruction. Not permanence, but turnover. Not dynasty, but churn. The Astors built monuments, the monuments fell. But the impulse to build them persists. New wealth creates new mansions, new hierarchies, new ballrooms where the chosen few gather while everyone else remains outside. The architecture changes, the system remains. The mansions fell long before the dynasty did. But both followed the same blueprint.